In case you haven't noticed, we love podcasts. In fact, we love building podcasts, everything from development to production. Because of all that, we're building a one-of-a-kind podcast network. If you have a podcast or looking to launch a new podcast, then we should talk. You can message me on Twitter at Eric_Kaz or hit us up any way that works for you. Let's talk about your podcast joining this one-of-a-kind podcast network. How did you become such a great decision maker, or it's possibly something you're still working on today?
For me personally, on the being decisive, I've always looked at it, coming from a military background, if you don't make a decision, it's worse to not make a decision than to actually not be able to put something into action. So you always want to be able to make a decision, good, bad, or indifferent. If it doesn't work out the way planned, but you're moving forward in one direction or another, and you can always adapt and overcome. I always looked at it as if you don't make a decision, you overanalyze, and you're going to paralyze yourself. You're not going anywhere. So you have zero chances of success if you don't make a decision and you overanalyze things. But if you do, then that increases your odds making a decision and having a good outcome. In the military, it's life or death, right?
Yeah.
So if you're overseas and you're paralyzed because you can't figure out which way to go, what to do, or what decision to make, you got to kick back on your training and rely on what you've learned over the years and make a decision and move forward. You can sit there and analyze all day. Did I go in the right direction? Whatever the task may be. But if you do that, you're going to waste time and you're ultimately going to be unsuccessful. So I think you've got to be decisive, make a decision, and use all your thoughts and all your training, whether it's in finance, whether it's in the military. So everything that got you to the point you're at in your career or in your personal life, collectively gather those thoughts up and be able to make that decision. And don't think about, I think a lot of things that help us is you don't think about steps 1 and 2. When you're making those decisions, think about steps 3, 4, and 5. So what are the other variables that are going to come in on this, and how's this going to impact things down the road? Not immediately, but are you planting a seed for something to grow if it's business, or are you going to hedge against something down the road? So think about steps 3, 4, and 5, not just what's in front of you when you're making these decisions, and move forward. And then you can always analyze it afterwards. After that task is complete, after everything's done, then you can analyze it and see what you did right or wrong. But I think I was instilled with my decision making back in the military, because it was literally, if you don't make a decision, then you're dead. And that's just putting it very blunt, but it's the truth.
Yeah. So did you have habits like before the military, let's say? Were you a good decision maker before the military? Or, in some level, maybe not what you became, but did you have like seeds of it?
A little bit. My upbringing is a little bit structured, not too much, but kind of make the most out of everything and make some decision. Don't sit there and overanalyze things and think through it. And I got a lot of that through sports at the beginning, but that was just a little. And then the military just exponentially expanded that to the nth degree. You go on one deployment for 6 months when you're 19 years old. That helps. And then when you're 22, you go on another deployment for over a year. And by the time you get out, you're very decisive. You know what you want in life. You know which way you want to go, and nothing can stop you.
Yeah. The information that you're talking about, because you can't possibly have all the information, right? You can get as much information. You obviously see this in the military. We can look at the most basic level, right? Like you're going to buy something on Amazon. Well, now we have Amazon reviews. There's information, and then you can go read reviews in other places. So we're talking about a very basic decision in that context. But how do you grab your information and go? Because you'll see people, like you said before, get paralyzed by reading too many reviews, reading about whatever that decision is. That's, again, a very basic example, but it's something that people deal with on a daily basis. And I think it's a way perhaps to help with your habits. Like I've seen it before, like when people are debating what flavor of gum to buy when they're sitting at the checkout line. Just pick one and go, and just be okay with that decision. And if you didn't like it, well, the next time you go there, to get a different one, as opposed to debating which one should they buy, because you're instilling that habit, and you just got to continue to work on it, because I do believe it is a habit, and just saying, make the decision and go with it. Information though, in the military, like you said before, and looking out at the landscape of where things are and where things aren't, and people that are possibly there, at what point in the military is it okay to proceed forward? Like, how do you decide when you have enough information to say, let's go?
Well, you never have enough information in the military, right? And half the time when you do get intelligence, it's outdated. So you've got to be trained in what you're doing and know it well. So I think you just analyze what you have at a given moment. And I always started out with my guys in the military and always said, look, you may not be able to make the big decision right now, but make some really good small decisions, and that'll ultimately lead up to a better response. So you want to sit there and you got this big plan and you want to take this subjective. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, there's a lot of small decisions that got to be made before that. So in doing that, you're making these small decisions and you're making it to a point to where, hey, look, you know what? Our success is going to be inevitable if we proceed down this path, because we position ourselves through these small decisions and being decisive and getting from point A to point B. The overall picture will be successful with that. That was one of my big things is you may not be able to make that big decision right now, but make some small ones and make them to the best of your ability, given the information that you have. And ultimately, that's going to lead to a bigger decision, and you're going to position yourself more successfully that way.
In case you haven't noticed, we love podcasts. In fact, we love building podcasts, everything from development to production. Because of all that, we're building a one-of-a-kind podcast network. If you have a podcast or looking to launch a new podcast, then we should talk. You can message me on Twitter at Eric_Kaz or hit us up any way that works for you. Let's talk about your podcast joining this one-of-a-kind podcast network.